Welcome to Entrepreneur in Action. If you or someone you love suffers from back pain, today's episode is for you. My guest is Jerry Montiel, a fitness coach who specializes in helping people with compressed discs and post-surgery recovery get their mobility back. Jerry, welcome. I'm excited to learn more about you and your expertise.
Hey, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So tell me, what led you to specialize in back pain recovery?
So it all started when I was 16. I am a personal trainer. Unlike most trainers, I wasn't an active kid. I was very overweight, very sedentary, didn't really do much other than work with my dad in the summers during construction and stuff like that. So when I was 16, I was working with my dad doing roofing. And I don't know if you've ever done roofing before, but you have to carry these very heavy packets that can weigh anywhere from 40 up to like 100 plus pounds. You have to
Like
carry
what's
them up a ladder.
what's in the packet?
So the packets carry like the roofing shingles and like the tiles and stuff like that. And then like before you lay those down on top of the plywood, there's also some like kind of like think of it like waxy construction paper that has metal wires through it. So those things are super heavy too, and you have to lay those down, put tar, and then you staple the like sheets on top and stuff like that. So in carrying those things, on top of that, me not exercising, not having any strength, not knowing how to pick stuff up, I ended up injuring my back, and I dealt with that injury for a very long time. Never went to the doctor for it, never did anything like that. It wasn't until many, many years later I did go to the doctor and they're like, hey, you have a compressed disc in your lower back. And I was like, well, that explains a lot, right? That explains a lot of my back pain. But even before that, I had started becoming very obsessed with why is my back hurting? And more importantly, what can I do about it? Like the pain is here, can't really change that. But what I can change is like, what can I do now moving forward to try to like make it go away?
So what were your insights, right? So you were a kid when this was happening, and so you started thinking about this from your childhood years. You're like, how do I stop back pain? And this was a personal problem for you. So you had super high payoff for you to solve this problem because this was gonna reduce the, like, I'm assuming, like, maybe one of the worst things that was going on in your whole life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, so like I was telling you, like I was overweight, I didn't exercise, didn't do anything. So ignoring the back pain, I was in a lot of like mental anguish. I mean, you're a teenager, so your hormones all over the place. You're already like, all over emotionally. It's already an emotional roller coaster being in high school and all of that. But on top of that, I had like no self-esteem. I had very low confidence in myself. I was riddled with anxiety. So it sucked. So mentally, I was already like going through a lot. And then you add the back pain in there. So my back pain would be to the point where sometimes I would be bedridden for multiple days. It would be very difficult to even breathe just because the pain would be radiating so much going down my legs. And it sucked because it takes you to a very dark place when you get to a position where, I mean, you start thinking like, am I going to be paralyzed because I can't even move my legs right now? Is this going to be what the rest of my life is like? And on top of that, being a teenager with all the other things on top of that, like it sucks. It really, really sucks. So I have always been a very like inquisitive person. I've always been very like analytical to like little tiny details and stuff. And I like learning a lot and like reading. So I was like, well, why don't I just start, looking up anatomy books and kind of figuring out like, how do these things work? Obviously, anatomy books didn't really teach me too much about that, but I would sing like, oh, hey, these muscles connect like this to here. I learned that muscles kind of like pull on things. So maybe I should try kind of stretching in this way and see if that helps and stuff. So it was just a process of doing like little things like that without any proper guidance that kind of started pushing me where it's like, hey, there's ways to figure out how to kind of like fix this maybe. And that's kind of where I was at.
What are some of the things you discovered? Like, what muscles are the ones that are involved in this process? So if I don't know anything about, having a compressed disc, tell me what, like, what's happening, like, to the body. I know that it's very painful, and I know that it's something that people really don't know how to fix. And a lot of people will go under the knife. They go to surgery to like have their spine fused and do these kind of really intense things that are really impactful to their future. But you didn't do any of that in terms of surgery. You found a way to heal yourself. And so, like, tell me about that. Like, what were some of the aha moments that got you forward in that journey?
So you make a really good point on that. There is a lot of trust when it comes to doctors and stuff like that when it comes to injuries, and not saying that people shouldn't trust in them, but it's really good to get multiple opinions and to start like trying to educate yourself as much as you can on a lot of things. So some of the big things that I noticed, because having a compressed disc can vary. Mine is between L4 and L5, so it's down towards my lower back, like pretty much all the way like close to my hips. You can have a compressed disc in your neck. So one of the important things to realize when it comes to any neck compression is that if you look at a map of how your spine works and how the your nerves branch out, you can see if the compression is in a certain place, you'll see kind of like where the pains will kind of radiate and stuff. On top of that, a big thing that happens is a lot of the muscles in the surrounding areas also get tight. Your muscles will get very tight to try to overcompensate and try to keep the area very stable because there's pain that's happening there. It's just a natural reaction that your body does. Unfortunately, this can cause even more pain because you become even more stiff, more immobile. And then when you do try to move, you're so immobile that it crushes it even more, it causes more pain. So a big thing to realize is, let's say you have a compressed disc, let's say in your neck, you're getting pain going down your arms. Well, yeah, the compressed disc is there, but what's going on above it, right? And all the muscles above it, the muscles below it, and your traps, your mid back, because all those things are going to be working together to try to like stabilize that compressed area. With me, it was my lower back. So it was the muscles that fan outside of your lower back, the QL, it was my glutes, it was my hamstrings. All those things got extremely tight to try to keep me out of pain, which is a good thing in a sense. But since I didn't understand those things, all that was tight. I would maybe do a stretch or two and it would alleviate one thing, but since another structure was still overcompensating, more pain would happen. So that's my biggest piece of advice when it comes to anybody with any sort of nerve compression and they're trying to do something on their own while maybe they're waiting for surgery or they're waiting for second, third, fourth opinions, is start looking at the structures around the area and start stretching everything and moving very, very slowly within a pain-free range of motion and seeing what they can handle within that.
Yeah. So what is the biggest problem? Okay, because I haven't experienced, thank God, I haven't experienced, compressed disc. So I get the problem is pain that they're feeling. And like what is happening? What does it mean to have a compressed disc?
Good question. So pretty much what happens is you have, right, you have your vertebrae, right? And between each vertebrae going in your spine, you're going to have a little spongy disc in there. And that little spongy disc acts as like a cushion to allow your spine to articulate and move because your spine should have free range of motion to be able to like rotate, flex, extend laterally, forward and back, and all that. However, the thing that happens is you have nerves that are branching out from there, and that's why we can have sensations with our fingers and our face and our legs, and why we can react to pain and we know we're grabbing something, right? So what happens is, for whatever reason, either from a herniation, from an injury, something happens that uh, gap closes a little bit, right? It gets compressed. The fluid that's inside of that disc starts to escape, or it's herniated, so it's popped out. So what happens is now there's less space in between. Now those nerves have even less space to kind of come out from. So what happens is any further injury, any further tightness, any wrong movement can compress that limited amount of space that you already have. And since you don't have much room to move with, those nerves start getting pinched very, very easily. So when those nerves get pinched, it starts creating a pulsing, burning, stabbing pain going towards the areas where those nerves are branching out from. A lot of people will experience numbness, like I said, a burning sensation, a stabbing sensation, something that feels like you're being stabbed with like a hot knife. And at times you can lose sensation in certain areas. So for myself, since I have it between L4 and L5, my pain will mainly be around that part in my lower back. It'll go down into my hips. Sometimes it will go all the way down into like my ankles and my feet. I am 32 now. I had that injury when I was 16. So half my life I've had this injury. Luckily, I have not had any pain, but I have not had any pain in about 2 years, 3 years actually. But another thing because of this compression is now I have very limited feeling on the outside of my right calf. It's not that it's numb or anything, like completely shut off, but if I touch it, it doesn't really feel like I'm touching my skin. It feels like I'm touching through like a thick cloth or something. So it's like a muted kind of sensation. And that's something that can happen as well with compressed discs in all kinds of areas.
So for the last half of your life, you were experiencing this injury which causes pain every day, right? Is it like every moment of every day, like literally?
It's a roller coaster, I'll say. And yes, the pain is pretty much every single day, but you have times where it's extremely intense, and you have times where it's like so low and you've become so accustomed to the intense pain that you forget about it. It's just a normal sensation right now. You can see your nose at all times, but your brain chooses to ignore it, right? And you don't really notice your nose anymore. Kind of like that in a sense. You've become so immune to it, so normalized to it that you don't really feel it. But if you really think about it, you're like, yeah, that's still there. So that's kind of how it was for the majority of that last 16 or so years.
And what changed for you, Jerry? Like what were some of the things that you did for yourself that helped you on your journey? And then of course, I want to ask about like, what do you do when you work with your clients? But just
Mhm.
because you had such a personal story, like, how did you get over it? And I know it took like years and years. And I'm assuming since that took you all those years, like now you have a lot of knowledge that you're bringing to every client from that personal experience, and you'll be able to compress all that knowledge and give it to them in a quicker dose. But let's do here like the expanded version of how you
Mhm.
solve the pain for yourself first.
So for myself, one of the biggest and most important things that helped me was working on my mental health. Whenever you experience any sort of severe back injury, spinal injury, like a compressed disc or anything else that may happen, as I explained, the pain, it's a very constant, thing that's there in your life. It is a burning, painful sensation. It can get to the point where you, like myself, was bedridden, couldn't move. That would happen to me about 2 times per year, where I would just be stuck. I couldn't move. I could have been sitting on a couch watching a movie, enjoying myself, and as soon as I tried to get up, I knew I was like screwed. I was done. My back is locked up, pain is going down my legs. I can't even take a deep breath because the pain will radiate even more. And the reason I bring that up and I bring the mental health stuff is because that can take you into an extremely dark place. It can take you into a very dark place in your head because you start thinking like, is this going to be how my life is? Like, am I ever going to get better? Is this going to be the time that I stuck like this for good? Like, I'm not going to recover this time. And then you start thinking very, very dark thoughts like, what kind of quality of life is this? Like, do I really want to live like this and stuff? And it sucks. It's a really, really dark spiral that people can go down very, very easily. And the thing that helped me a lot was going to therapy and working on that because one of the things that I noticed is as many people, we hold our stress in our bodies. And when we sleep, if we go to sleep stressed, we're going to manifest it in different ways. Some people like clench their jaws and they start, getting like stress fractures in their teeth. Some people hold it in their hands and they're just like constantly clenching their hands and in various ways. I held it in my back, so my back would tighten up and seize up a lot. So I got to the point where I would have panic attacks when I would have to go to sleep because I didn't want to fall asleep. Because I knew it was like a 90% chance that I would wake up feeling worse than I was feeling during the day. And mind you, I had just spent the whole day stretching and working on feeling better. So I was like at a 9 on the pain level. By the time I'm going to bed, I'm like down to a 3. And I don't want to fall asleep because when I wake up, I might be back up to that 9, maybe a 10, and I'm going to be like in excruciating pain. So I would have a lot of panic attacks and I would have a lot of stress just trying to fall asleep because my body didn't want to. So working on the mental health, working with a therapist, diving deep into, you know, things that have caused this anxiety that I grew up with and kind of led to these further strong reactions to my pains and stuff like that definitely helped unlock my mind and put me in a much calmer and safer place so that the physical interventions that I was doing, as in like the stretching, learning how to move better, priming my body properly, like staying in constant motion and stretching and stuff, could have the proper benefits and could have the long lasting benefits that I wanted them to have instead of them like dying out at night because I'm panicking, stressing, getting tight, and just re injuring myself in a sense. So that's like a huge, huge thing for myself. And that's a huge thing that I advocate for with all of my clients is because I know how dark that can be. I know how stressful it can be. You cannot go through your life, may have a sitting job where you're just typing. It's not even a physical job, but the pain is there and it's constantly nagging you that you can't even focus on what's going on in front of you, let alone can you focus on family, friends, children, right? It feels like you're always like in a bad mood and it's not really because of them and you don't mean to take it out against them, but you're just suffering. So being able to work on that and putting somebody in a in a much healthier headspace allows them to accept the physical interventions much easier and let them take a much longer effect.
And so you did therapy, you worked with a therapist to get to that healthier headspace, to reduce the anxiety and the panic attacks. What specifically, what work was it that helped you unlock that better mental health, that reduced anxiety? What were some of the most important aspects of getting there?
So I feel like when it comes to therapy, it's similar to personal training, which I do. Some people want that direct, in your face, blunt answer. Kind of like, this is this, that's why it's happening. Just there. I'm not that type of person. I much prefer the like self-discovery route. So I got very lucky that with my first therapist, that was her style of therapy. I didn't even know there was different styles. I just learned it like with her, it was like that where she would just ask me a lot of questions. And in that therapy, we would talk about other, through the questions, we would dig into like deep rooted things. Like I would bring up, like, hey, I feel anxiety when I'm going to bed. Okay. Well, what other thoughts are happening when that's, and it's just kind of like this self-guided journey where she was just asking, constantly asking, and asking questions. And then I was able to come up with my own realizations as to like, that makes sense because of these questions and covering all of this, she's helping me connect all the dots without just giving me the blunt answer. Because I feel like if she did that, I may have kind of been reserved or kind of like pushed away, kind of like, whoa, 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 like, what are you doing? But because she gave me that freedom to kind of just explore everything and connect the dots myself, I was able to make that self-discovery and make that kind of like realization and those changes within myself much easier because it was coming from me within me rather than it being like told to me.
So is there a name for that type of therapy? Is that called like Socratic method? Like I'm thinking of like Socrates, asking
Hmm.
questions a lot. Is that kind of where they're guiding you by asking you questions so that you can get to that self-discovery where it's really more impactful and you really feel like you've invested, you're getting the result for yourself. Is that what that's called, or is there another like term for that?
I'll be honest, I'm not too sure. I would have to ask my wife because she's a therapist now. So I would have to ask her.
Yeah. Yeah, so I love hearing this, that you were able to find a way, because I Jerry, I think I told you before, because we talked other times, but I think I told you before I watched a Netflix show where somebody, they had a compressed disc and they spent like years, and like part of the goal of the show was like, over a period of years, could he alleviate this pain? And it turned out the answer in the show was no. He was
Mhm.
unable to alleviate his compressed disc pain. And they went on this journey like for years in the show. I think the show, like the title is something about fasting. and
Hmm.
him and his brother like fasted. But then, we get to the end of the episode, of the end of the whole like documentary, and the guy's like, well, I went on this journey to try to alleviate the compressed disc pain, and I still have it. It's not
Hmm.
alleviated. And it's been like, I don't know, like 5 years or 10 years that they've been
Hmm.
doing it. And it took you some time too to figure it out.
Yes.
But I think your story can really give people hope that you can achieve this. And you're someone who embodies that now in your work. So if I'm your new client, Jerry, and I come to you and I say, I've got a compressed disc, or I had surgery for my back pain. Like, what are some of the first things that you will have me work with you on?
Yeah. So the very first thing I would do, we would, in a sense, do an interview similar to like we're doing right now, because I would want to dig deep as to what's going on with the individual, right? Just because they have a compressed disc doesn't mean that their life isn't completely unique, right? The reason why it happened, how long it's been going on for, and stuff, and how it affects their day-to-day life. So I would go into a very deep interview with them, interview process with them first, where I'm just asking them like, hey, like, what are your goals? And they're like, oh, I don't want to be in pain anymore. Yeah, but what does that mean to you? And they go and we dig deep, does being out of pain to them mean just not feeling pain in general? I mean, I think that's everybody's goal. Or could it mean something deeper like, oh, I want to be able to play with my children again because I haven't been able to play with them, and just really going deep to find those very deep intrinsic whys for their goal, because that will feed a much stronger purpose than just a very blanket goal answer, right? We want to be able to have a very deep rooted reason why we want to achieve something, whether it's getting out of pain or in general weight loss, getting a new job, or whatever it is. If you have a very deep rooted reason why, it's more likely that you're going to succeed and actually continue with it and do the things that need to be done to change your life, whether it's physical, mental, whatever it may be. After we would go through that process, we would go through a movement screening. So I need to see how they're moving. So I would put them through some very basic movements: a squat, a hip, a hinge, or a horizontal press pull, vertical press pull, and just see how their body's moving and how their body has adapted movement wise to the pain that they have been experiencing. Because that's what's going to happen. If you have pain in one leg, you're going to develop a limp because you're feeling pain there. The limp just doesn't happen in that leg. Every single other part of your body has to overcompensate for that. Maybe because of that, now one leg is much stronger than the other. You walk slightly sideways, even if you don't have the limp anymore. So a lot of these things we would have to discover is like, how is this person moving? How has their body adapted to it? So what are things that we can start doing to start reversing those adaptations and start getting them into a much more like neutral position so their body can be more free to actually explore movements rather than being inhibited in one range of movement or so forth.
And so, what kind of transformations have you seen? Like, what's some of the like what are some of the like a common transformation that could happen, or like what's like maybe an extraordinary transformation that you've worked with someone to that maybe something that people thought wasn't even possible?
Yeah, so an incredible transformation is one of my very first clients that I got, like within my first month of becoming a personal trainer. This man came and at that point, he was in his late 50s. He had had four spine surgeries. His doctors had told him he was just meant to be a desk jockey. He has his business, he works on the computer most of the time, and that's going to be your life. Don't really exercise, don't really do much because you're just going to hurt yourself again. I mean, four spine surgeries later, like, hey, you have pretty messed up back. It constantly gets hurt. Don't do stuff. So at the gym that I was working at, I met him. I became his coach. Remember, we still talk about it to this day because he is still my client to this day, 8 years later. He could not do a lunge, like, take one step forward, try to kind of like get your knees close to the ground. Like, just initiating that movement, he was wobbling back and forth. He was almost going to fall over. To this point now, 8 years later, he has done a triathlon. He has deadlifted close to 300 pounds, benched well over 200 pounds. He has done some incredible things. He participated in the LA Marathon. And To this day, again, we are still coaching together, and he tells me all the time how much better he feels. He's like, it's incredible the place that I was in. We share common stories of the dark places that we have both been in because of back pain and stuff like that. And he's like, I'm not there anymore. I don't feel that. He's like, I have energy just like when I was in high school playing football. I can pop up and down like nothing. His favorite hobby is working on cars. He loves to race. And he's like, yeah, he's like, I just crawl under my car. I'm working on it. I pop up, I switch tires, do nothing. And mind you, he's in his mid 60s now. So it's like he's just up and out, just like nonstop doing things. And he's like, I could not do this if it wasn't for all the work that we have been doing. He's like, and it's what keeps me coming back. He even admits, he's like, there's mornings that I wake up, I'm like, I don't want to go. Like, it's cold, I'm tired, I'm sleepy, but he still always makes it in. And it's just like, because he understands the process, he's understood, and he's seen all the benefits that have come from it. So yeah, 4 spine surgeries later, he's had a rotator cuff surgery, he had a reconstructed thumb from a motorcycle accident. He's had a whole bunch of stuff. And yeah, this dude's in incredible shape, and he is stronger than a lot of people half his age that I know. So yeah.
So that's amazing. So when he came to you, he sounds like he did not have that level of energy. He did not have that physical, um, that the musculature and all of that. Like he couldn't move the same way. Like, what was it? Just luck that brought you guys together? Like, how do people find you, and how did you guys come together?
I will say it was 100% just luck. It just happened. Like back then, I had just started training, so I wasn't marketing myself as a back pain guy or anything like that. I didn't understand that process of being a trainer. I was just there at the gym. It was my first month in. I was nervous, trying to coach people and stuff, and it just happened that we met and we were training together. But in learning all of his little pains and stuff, like I identified a lot with him. Like I was like, yeah, like I know where you've been. And again, just going through movement screenings, it's like, hey, you know, try this, try that. And he's like, whoa, that's feeling better. I'm like, cool, let's keep exploring more and stuff. So it was really just pure luck. It just happened.
So to me, like, a couple of the signs of mastery that I look for when I'm looking for somebody, as a coach, or, to help me with something, is, were they able to achieve it themselves? And then were they able to take someone else through the process to achieve the results as well? And
Mhm.
so what I'm hearing from you is you've done both of those things. So now, what is your next step in terms of your business? How are you marketing yourself as a back pain guy? Like, how are you getting the word out? I mean, we're doing this podcast right now, but what are some of the other ways that you're getting the word out, Jerry?
Well, this is honestly the first step that I'm doing with this. One thing that I have been told very often is that I don't talk about my story enough. And it's a very true thing. I don't really talk about all the things that I have gone through. And what I will be starting to do more is posting that like on my social media and being much more vulnerable with people because it's things that everybody goes through. I can see that it's a very common thing that people will see a personal trainer and just assume, hey, this person eats healthy all the time, works out a million hours a week, does all the cardio, and this is just their life. And even though this may be our life, it doesn't mean that we always enjoy doing those things, and it does not mean that it comes easily to us either. Because trust me, there are many mornings where I do not want to work out. I do not want to go out there and do the work because I'm physically, mentally tired, or I just literally do not have any motivation to do it. It happens to us too. I also get cravings when I'm driving by like Carl's Jr. I'm like, hey, I really want to buy a burger, right? Or like it's a Friday night and I'm hanging out with my wife and we're gonna watch a movie and I'm like, we should order some pizza. Like it's the same exact thing. We're human just like everybody else. The only difference is maybe we understand the consequences of certain things a little bit more. We have seen the consequences of things a lot more often, and we just understand the science of it. But just because we do doesn't mean that we don't have normal human cravings, laziness, and all that stuff too. So that's a big thing that I want to do now is really become much more open. The thing with me is I'm very open with people in person. I'm very, very open with talking about my insecurities, talking about all the things that I've gone through, talking about going to therapy, which has not been a very common thing amongst men. It has not been a very common thing for people to open up about, but I've always been very open about it. But in person, I have not done that on the internet. Maybe I feel nervous about it. Maybe I feel scared. Maybe also I'm almost kind of lazy at posting. So that's definitely something I have committed myself to change. And I really thought that this podcast was kind of like, hey, like this is going to be my time to like really just let it all out there and just have this be my like my starting point and just be like, hey, let's put it all out on the line.
It's a brand new world from today forward. Now,
Exactly.
from this day forward, you're going to be helping more people, and more people are going to be able to find you, and it's just going to be a virtuous cycle of more people getting helped and people reducing their pain and becoming healthier. So this is wonderful. I'm glad that I can be a part of this too, Jerry. This is really cool. So you said, right, as we all experience, you don't feel motivated some days. I don't want to get out of bed. It's cold. I feel lazy. I don't want to do anything. How do you get yourself over that motivation hump?
So the motto for my business is motivation is limited, discipline is forever. So I remind myself of that a lot. I remind myself that motivation is an amazing feeling. It is amazing. It's the thing that, well, it gets that spark going to do something new, to do something amazing, right? But it's going to be an extremely fleeting thing. And that's where you have to build proper habits so you can create discipline for whenever those highs fall down, you keep yourself going. So there's that. That's like a very superficial way of putting it. And it's the way that I put it for a lot of my clients stuff. And it's why I made it the motto of my business. But if we go much deeper, it's my deep why as to why I became a coach. And the reason why I became a coach is because of everything we've talked about. I was a very anxious kid, very, very overweight, no strength, no muscle, and I had a compressed disc in my lower back, right? So when I turned 21, I decided that I was done with this. I did not want to feel that anymore. Enough's enough. So I did what most people do, and I starved myself and I did endless cardio. But in 6 months, I lost 70 pounds. So I went from 200 pounds down to 130. I had abs that kind of showed, and I was on top of the world. But if I thought about it very, very deeply, the reason why I was on top of the world wasn't because I had gotten skinny, but it was because I realized that I could change my life and that I had the power within myself to make a positive impact. And shortly after that, I got a job at a fast food place and I gained like 50, 60 pounds back again. But the body was gone, right? But that mental shift within me wasn't gone. So that started my process of trying becoming, more obsessed about trying to learn more about nutrition and exercise and how everything really works together, really learning about the mental health aspect of it, learning about recovery, learning about having proper sleep and all of that. And in that journey and in me kind of like realizing that I could help other people, I realized that that was the real reason why I do all of this is because I want to provide that change for other people as well. I want to be able to give people that power. You don't have to have a compressed disc, even though it's what I like to focus on. You could have been overweight just like I was. You could have never have stepped foot inside of a gym and you could be extremely nervous about doing that process. Whatever it may be that you're struggling with, I want to give people the power and the tools that they need and that they can use to help make a positive impact in their life and in their families' lives, their friends' lives, their children's lives. Because once you empower one person with these tools, they can start kind of empowering other people around them too. And that's the big goal is I want to empower people with, health and a positive mind and a positive outlook as to, how their life can be compared to where they currently are.
It's amazing. Yeah. So listening to your story, it's the story itself is a roller coaster, right? Because you were overweight, you were in pain. You're 21 years old. You said, "I'm going to change this." So you starved yourself. You did cardio. So like, what's cardio look like? Jumping rope and like running and stuff, and that got you from 200 to 130.
Yeah.
Suddenly you had abs. I've never had abs, but you had abs. You felt on top of the world, and and but then I also want to hear, because I know your story because we talked before. So I want to hear about that slippery slope when you were working in fast food, because it's kind of fun, even though it was a negative thing, but the story's kind of fun. So tell me about what happened in fast food that led to you gaining back that 50, 60 pounds. What were you doing in your job, Jerry?
Again, so like we talked about earlier, I'm human just like everybody else, right? I get cravings, I get hungry. I'm a cook at a fast food place. So, hey, there's a burger, right, that I can cook for myself. What if I add five more patties to it and a bunch more slices of cheese? Or like, hey, we have popcorn chicken. What if I add chili and cheese to it also? So it was a lot of that. It was a lot of that.
So it
Yeah.
sounds like you came up with some new menu items, like the
I,
five, the
oh
five
yeah,
bagger hamburger.
yes, yes.
They
I,
needed
I
the
will,
secret,
s-
the
I will
secret to the
say,
menu.
yeah, no, I will say that popcorn chicken with the chili and cheese, absolutely amazing.
Do you order that? Could somebody ever order that, or is that the only thing you can do if you work there
You
after
know
hours?
what? I don't know. I feel like you might be able to order it and they'll just charge you for the ingredients separately, like the popcorn chicken with the chili and the cheese. Because I mean, it's ingredients they freely have, and from what I remember, like you could just kind of do add-ons in there. So I'm sure they could. So I'm not recommending this because I'm a health professional. But if anybody would like a tasty fast food place thing that has popcorn chicken, chili, and cheese, try combining them together.
The worst thing you can do for your body, but it tastes amazing for a second. What is that?
Absolutely.
A moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips, as they
Yeah.
say. Oh gosh. So okay, so if someone comes to you a little bit more back on the pain side of things, like if somebody comes to you in pain, what's the first thing that they should do? Like for pain management. And I assume they've probably gone to their doctor and their doctor has given them some kind of pills. Tell me, like, what are some of the things that you see as like more helpful? What are some of the things they probably get recommended?
Okay. So I feel very strongly about this. Doctors, the whole goal of the majority of just like primary care physicians is to get people out of pain and just to have them not come back to the doctor, which is a very, very noble thing to do. However, the things that majority of doctors study is medicine. So they will give them pills, right? Some sort of anti-inflammatory, a painkiller, sometimes like muscle relaxants and stuff. And they give them these things and they're like, you need to rest, or don't do that again. If you got hurt doing that, just don't do it again, which makes sense why they would recommend stuff like that. What I generally recommend with my clients is the less you move, the more you're going to get hurt because you're not learning to move properly. Like if you got hurt squatting, well, I mean, you have to squat to sit on the toilet. You have to squat to sit on your chair and stand up and do all those things. Like, are you just gonna fall over all the time? Like, no, you have to learn to be able to move throughout different movement patterns. On top of that, the very common protocol that was given whenever an injury happened is called RICE, which is rest, ice, compress, and elevate. This was dubbed a very, very long time ago, and the doctor that created that came out quite a few years ago, and he's like, I messed up. He's like, that's not helping people recover, it's actually making it worse. And the reason being is when you're icing something, you're restricting the blood flow. So you're not letting blood go in and out. So it can take waste away, bring white blood cells in, start fixing the area. Inflammation is a good thing. Not excessive inflammation, right, where something's breaking down, but you want to have inflammation in certain areas because that means blood's going in and out and it's creating the repairing process. And the other thing was people were just like not moving. And that's extremely bad. So the things that I recommend to my clients is like, yes, take whatever medication they gave you to get out of that immediate acute pain that you're in, because you want to be able to function again. But as soon as you're capable of moving, we need to be able to get into movement as quick as possible. Ideally, guided movement with a professional if you don't really know what you're supposed to be doing or you can't find the resources to be able to kind of figure out what you're doing, but you need to be able to move. Let's say somebody sprained their ankle. Normally, they would just elevate it, they would put ice all over it, and they're like, oh, I'm not going to move it anymore. The goal is remove that ice because you want that inflammation. And as soon as you can, you try to move your ankle within a pain-free range of motion. And you're doing that all day and all day. So you don't create stiffness. And so you create a bunch of motion in the area to keep blood moving in and out. It's the same thing with back pain. My back would be injured all the time. I'd be like, well, I'm just going to lay down and not do anything. But what would happen as soon as I moved? Pain again. The movement was creating pain because I didn't know how to move. I didn't know what was going on in my back. I didn't know, are muscles tight? What muscles should I activate? Am I just not activating my core when I'm trying to flip over and I'm just, ripping my back apart? So being able to move as soon as possible, as much as somebody can possibly handle, is the most important thing people should be able to do or should be doing when dealing with any sort of pain. Outside of like a broken bone or something like that. But if it's just muscular pain, like you need to move like as soon as possible.
I think it's, as you mentioned, right, it's really important to note like that the science, right, that the doctor, the expert, who I think it's I looked it up, it's Dr. Gabe Merkin. He wrote that Rice Protocol, and he introduced it in the 70s in a book called the Sports Medicine Book. And obviously, people followed that for a while, and he was having his patients follow that. I assume that he's working with a lot of athletes. And
Hmm.
as you said, 30 years later, in 2015, he revised his stance. He said, ice and complete rest can actually delay the healing rather than support it. So I think that's actually very commendable of him to come out and say, you know what, I was wrong about this. And then it's great that, we got that information. Like, okay, we tried that. That was state of the art for 30 years. Now we've moved forward in time. And now we
Hmm.
know that actually, even though, as you said, it feels comfortable to rest, and some people who don't have the latest information might get the recommendation of, actually, yeah, you should rest, because as you said, their protocol is they don't want you to feel in pain. But because it can delay healing, that a complete rest is not the only answer. And so, as you've said, like learning to do those stretches that don't necessarily, that are within a pain-free range of motion, so that that people who are experiencing pain can start to feel that they have some agency in their life. They can feel like, I'm able to do something. I'm not just forced to just lay here. I can take some action to improve my life. What do you think is the biggest misconception about back pain recovery? Like, what do people not know that they really should know differently?
Surgery isn't the only way. That's one of the quickest things that doctors will offer is surgery. Unfortunately, if you have amazing health insurance, they'll throw it out there even quicker, right? That's just how it is. It's just the nature of the business because it is a business. And yes, they are well intentioned because at the end of the day, they are trying to help you, right? But that's not the end all be all when it comes to back pain. Like I said previously, get second, third, fourth opinions. Don't just go to a medical doctor. Find a qualified physical therapist. Find a very qualified sports chiropractor. Ask around, ask other people. More importantly, try to find other people who have been in back pain and have recovered from it and see what they did. And don't just accept that blanket answer of like, I did surgery or I did this. Ask. Keep asking, like, oh, well, you did do that, but what did you do after? What did you do before? How was your life before that? And how was your life after that? Because I promise you that there will be many other things that they were doing incongruent to that one thing that they're putting the cure to, that all those things actually accumulated to them getting better, right? A lot of people say, like, oh, well, it was a surgery that helped me. It's like, yes, maybe the surgery did help, but they omitted the fact that they did physical therapy for like a year after. And it's like, well, what did you learn in the physical therapy? Oh, like I learned how to like, you know, raise my rib cage, use my scapulars better, and do this and this and this. And it's like, well, could that have been helping a lot too? And maybe can I try that first before I do the surgery, and I may not have to do the surgery, right? So being able to ask a lot of questions before, after, during, like you want to discover as much as you can, similar to like how I do with my interview process with my prospective clients. Like you can't just accept one answer because there's a lot more going on usually.
And what are some of the most impactful changes like that you help people with in their approach to movement, right? So you're working with your clients and a lot of this is about movement, even resistance training like weightlifting, that is also about movement. So
Mhm.
what do you find are some of the most like the biggest things that you can do with most of your clients that help them with their movement?
So my two biggest goals in helping all of my clients is one, getting them to be able to kind of function with their day-to-day life much easier and pain-free. I've had clients where we do the interview process and right, and they tell me about their pains, they tell me everything, and we dig really deep. And then a month later, after working with me, they tell me something new. They're like, "Hey, this is the first day I walked down the stairs without any pain in my knees." I'm like, "Well, you never even mentioned you had pain in your knees going downstairs." And they're like, "Well, it's because I was so used to it, I didn't even think about it anymore. It was just a normal thing. But now that I don't feel it anymore, yeah, like I don't have pain in my knees anymore." Stuff like that. Again, just day to day, like lifestyle things that they should be doing, should be able to do pain free, right? Bending over to grab a pot and a pan, picking up the child, going up and downstairs, whatever it may be, just getting them able to move much more easily within their day-to-day life. And the second thing is just getting them to be a whole lot stronger. We need them to gain a lot of strength so that they can continue to do that as the years go on, right? The goal isn't just to be able to get in and out of your chair without pain. Well, it's like, can you get in and out of your chair if you're carrying a grandchild as well? Now we added some load and it's away from your spine, so it feels even heavier. So those are the biggest goals with them is being able to move within their life and getting them a whole lot stronger.
And then like specifically, if I'm coming into you and I'm like working with you, like will you what do you do like to help me like understand something like, for example, maybe if my shoulders are too far forward and I
Mhm.
need to start bringing my shoulders back, like how do you tie that in for me so that I can remember these things, right? You might tell me in the moment if I'm working with you as my physical trainer, like, hey, pull your shoulders back. How can I remember that, Jerry? How do you help people remember these things that you're helping them?
So I created something called the checklist, and it starts from the ground up. And this checklist can be a universal way to set yourself up for any sort of movement. It's just a very basic way to set up. Once somebody becomes more advanced, things can change a lot. But in the very, very beginning, you work with a checklist, and it just starts from the ground up. Your feet are your foundation to everything that you're going to do. You're always on your feet. Even if you're sitting down, your feet are still going to be the thing that propels you up. So making sure that you keep most of your weight towards your heel while keeping your big toe and all your other toes down. So you start creating a nice firm foundation with your foot. And then you start stacking everything above every other joint. So you stay in a nice upward position rather than like leaning forward to back, leaning too far forward, leaning too far back. So making sure all your weight is firmly planted on your foot, making sure that your knees are fully extended, make sure that your glutes are tight, abs are tight, shoulder blades are pulled back and down. This creates thoracic extension. Generally, when people do that, they feel like they're standing a whole lot taller. And I'm like, just remember that every single joint from the ground up, you activate everything, and your goal is to be a puppet with a string on the top of the head, and you just are standing as tall as you can. In general, trying to maintain that as much as possible will help you get in and out of chair, in and out of a chair a lot easier. It'll help you bend over and pick something up a lot easier because you just kind of reminded your body how it's supposed to stack itself a lot better. And it's like, oh, okay, so I'm in this position now. Now let me try to move within it. Cool. I moved a whole lot better, right? So that's the thing that I kind of try to drill into everybody as much as possible is don't forget the checklist. Even right now that I'm sitting down, I'm sitting on a chair, right? I'm still trying to keep my feet like relatively flat, right? My legs are straight and my chest is up and I'm like this. I'm not just kind of slunched over, like most people do. Everybody's like on their phone nowadays, or they're on a computer, and everybody's just doing this. But if I remember the checklist, I'm still doing the same thing, but now I'm in a much more upright position.
So the checklist is so the your weight is on your heels of your feet. That's the
Yes.
first step of it. Okay, so
Wait.
the weight is on your heels of your feet. Jerry, I have noticed. I don't know if this is a trend, but maybe I mean is this just the last like 10, 20 years that this has been happening? But I don't remember when I was a kid seeing people walk around on their toes.
Hmm.
But as I walk around town, just like getting my steps in, I see people walking on their toes a lot.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I don't know what that's about and why that's happening, but tell me like what's up with that? Like why would that be bad and why should people be walking on their heels instead?
So it's not necessarily that people should be walking on their heels. Your foot should be able to move and articulate pretty much just like your hands. Your toes are just much shorter fingers, but your foot should be able to roll and rotate and do all of this stuff. So if you're wearing shoes right now, just like the majority of people are, and you look at them, the heel is this big and the area towards the toes is like this. So you have a heel drop, right? Heel to toe drop. So even just wearing shoes, you're already on your toes. You're already harboring like that position where we're angling forward, right? And everything's just going to start falling forward. You're not accustomed to putting weight into your heel. On top of that, since your foot is now like this, your calf is going to get very tight because now you're doing dorsiflexion. So your foot's doing this the whole time. That muscle gets really tight. It's already pulling everything forward. But now if you're standing barefoot, since that calf is tight, you're just going to fall forward like this. So a big reason why I believe that this is happening to a lot of people is because of shoes. The shoes that people wear, fashion, how it's become. Nike was a really, really, really big instrumental part in this happening. Shoes started getting bigger and bigger and softer heels. A Nike executive is the one that created the term jogging. Jogging isn't running. Jogging is pretty much like a power walk type thing. So they created shoes that had much softer heels to soften that impact from landing on the heel all the time, and it just became a thing. Every other company started copying them. That's how it is. Big soft heel, drops towards the toe. You have shoes like Hoka now and like all these other shoes where it's like super big, puffy shoes, like the Skechers shoes that kind of like rock back and forth. And yes, I can see how they feel great for walking or just for like standing because they're like super soft. But what they're doing is they're preventing your foot from doing its job. One great way that I can show this to you is you're typing on your computer right now. You use your computer to, your phone to text me, your computer to do all of this stuff. Could you do that if you were wearing oven mitts? You can. Now, imagine you were wearing oven mitts since you were a baby. And then, you know, 30, 40, 50 years later, I finally take the oven mitts off and I'm like, hey, I want you to write with a pencil. Do you think you would have the sensation and like the mental connection with your fingers to be able to like grab a pencil and do these fine motor patterns, right? You can't. The shoes that we wear nowadays compress our feet. We lose sensation in our foot. We can't really move our toes anymore. We can't identify what our heel is, what our toes are, what they're supposed to do, creating a proper arch in the foot. People now have very flat feet. They just wear orthotics all the time and they're not really working how they should, how their feet were intended to work. So now everybody's just falling forward all the time because they're wearing these shoes that are just launching them forward. So
Is
long-winded
there
answer as to why that's happening.
That's amazing. I love this. I love that we're going down this path. So if that's the majority of the shoes, surely there have to be some shoes that are better. Like, do you have any that you prefer for yourself or that you would prefer to recommend?
Yeah, so just in general, wearing barefoot shoes, like you can just Google barefoot shoes, and there are so many companies now that are coming out with shoes like this. So what qualifies a shoe as a barefoot shoe is that they're going to have very, very minimal padding at the bottom of the shoe between the ground and the bottom of your foot. Usually they're anywhere from like 4 to like 10 millimeters worth of like material that's creating a barrier between the ground and your foot. There's no heel drop, so they're perfectly flat. And the last important part is that the toe box, like where your toes are, it's wide because it allows your toes to splay open and move more freely. So the main company that like really made it big with this and really started pushing all of this is a company called Vivo Barefoot. They
How do you
have
spell it?
Vivo Barefoot, Barefoot. So there's that company. I've had a lot of their shoes over the years. Zero with an X, Xero. There's Tolos, there's Lambs. There's just so many brands out there now that make these types of shoes, and that's all they focus on. And at first, they looked funky and weird, and now the styles are getting a lot better. They're looking more like casual, normal shoes. There's a company called Splay that created a shoe now that looks very similar to Vans. So it's like they look eerily similar, like super similar. So it's like, yeah, they're looking a lot more quote unquote normal, but they're still barefoot, white-toed box, so much healthier for your foot, so your foot can start becoming a lot stronger. Now, I don't necessarily recommend that people go 0 to 100 with these types of shoes because it's a lot. Your feet are holding up your whole entire body, right? So it's a lot of pressure for your feet to have to just ditch all normal shoes and just go straight to barefoot shoes. So the things that I recommend to all of my clients from the beginning is just try to walk barefoot as much as you can at home. Start developing a sensation within your foot to be able to like, handle the weight of your foot, handle like touching hard objects with your feet, learning how to walk properly. Because of the shoes that we have now, everybody stomps with their heels a lot. But when you're barefoot, if you're walking very slow, that's okay. We have a lot of padding on our heel around the calcaneus bone. But if you're going to walk faster, like that's going to be too much impact, and you're going to feel it rattling through your spine and your joints and your teeth. So you have to learn to land a little bit more with the midfoot. Whenever you start running, you realize that you don't heel strike when you're running. You're landing with your midfoot the whole entire time because all these muscles are strong enough and your calf is strong enough to absorb the impact landing in that way. So the big thing is being able to just be barefoot as much as possible at home. On top of that, the shoes that we wear now are very tight. They have a very narrow toe box. Your toes get like this. So most people's toes are like this. They have a crazy bunion on their big toe because that shoe has just been smashing that big toe all the way in. So another thing is being able to open your toes again. So whenever you're sitting on the couch or ideally sitting on the floor watching TV, you want to do something that may feel and look weird at first, but you want a hand foot glove. So pretty much this is your foot, right? You want to just stick your fingers as much as you can between your toes and just try to move them around. And then if you can go a little bit further, you go more and more and more until your toes can open up all the way. And sometimes it hurts at first because it's a crazy stretch that your feet have not been used to, likely for many decades. So you just ease yourself into it, into slowly being able to move everything apart. And then from there, you try your best to kind of start being able to move your toes around and stuff. Again, you're trying to rediscover this whole like appendage that you have that you haven't really been using, right? So that's way before anybody ever even buys like a barefoot shoe, is just become comfortable with being barefoot at home. Once that becomes a lot more normal, then it's like you have two routes. If you don't already wear like flatter shoes like Vans or Converse or something like that, I'd say transition into those for your day-to-day outside life. You could buy Vans in a wide format, and that would be a lot better for your toes because it can open up a lot easier than the regular ones. And that's usually what I wear if I'm going to wear normal shoes. I have a lot of pair of just wider Vans. And having that be another transition because now again you're walking much more on a flat surface rather than the heel being elevated, and you're being more comfortable with opening up your toes as you're walking your day-to-day life, whether it's work, going on walks, or whatever it is. And then eventually, if you feel necessary or if you feel inclined or want to do, then you can start buying barefoot shoes to actually wear those out. Maybe you can start by just wearing them when you're going to work out, or wearing them for like some walks around the block. Again, building up that strength little by little. And then you can get to a point like where I am now, where I can exclusively wear barefoot shoes. I mean, I went to Universal Studios wearing some Vivo barefoots, and we walked, I think, like 6 miles, and I did it completely barefoot, standing in lines, just not moving at all, and then also just walking, climbing the stairs, and my feet were 100% fine. One thing I will say is if you do go down this route, your shoe size will likely go up because you're going to build so much muscle on your feet. Your feet will become thicker because they're going to become so much stronger. So you will need to probably like size up in your shoes after a while.
Wow. So this is This is like if you're like a Lord of the Rings fan, like they all like all the hobbits in the Lord of the Rings, they had like bigger feet with like fur on them, and
Hmm.
they love this about themselves. They're like,
Hmm.
oh, may the hair on your feet never go away, or something like
Yes, yes.
that. That's their live long and prosper.
Uh-huh.
Um, okay, so this is brand new to me. I've never
Hmm.
heard of barefoot shoes. So in the past, I've worn things like the things that work really well for me are Vans and New Balance. I've also had really good results with Reebok. The ones that were troublesome for me were like Nike. I can't wear them for a week without getting in excruciating pain. I thought it was because of my arch, but it could be for any number of reasons. I just felt it in my arch. I was like, I got to get rid of these shoes are making me unable to do whatever I need to do during the day. I also had Asics, and I had Asics for like a year before I went on a trip, and I was in Rome, and we were walking a ton, like 20,000 steps, 26,000 steps, and my feet were killing me. And so I went to a New Balance store because I was like, I just tried these Asics for a year. I'd never had Asics before. They worked up until I really pushed it. And then I got those New Balance, and it was instant relief. The rest of the trip, we were walking like 20,000 steps a day still. And with the New Balance, it was night and day for me. I was able to continue the trip. And, like I thought for a minute, I was like, am I going to be able to go to keep doing our trip, because we were walking all over Rome, and so the New Balance got me there, got me through it, and I still wear New Balance today. This was only in the last year that this trip happened. So, but Vans have always worked for me, and Reebok always did. So those are the three brands that I know. So now you're introducing me to Vivo barefoot. Zero starts with an X. Toulouse,
Tolos, Tolos.
Tolos. Okay, Lens and Splay. I'm gonna
Hmm.
check out these barefoot shoes now, and you're taking me to a whole different direction. I had no idea we are going to be talking about shoes during this conversation. Um, Now I want to check these out, and I
Hmm.
want to look at next time I see you. I want to look at the shoes that you're wearing because I want to see what those are. So you're usually wearing Vivos, is what you're saying?
Yeah, so we're Vivos and have Tolos. I have both of those. I've been looking into getting the Splays because they look like Vans, and that's the other shoe that I wear all the time. So I'm like, hey, might as well just go for those. So you might see me wearing those soon. I'll show them to you.
Okay, okay. So this is exciting. I've never even known that there was such a thing as barefoot shoes, and that it would make your foot wider and it would probably increase your shoe size because your
Hmm.
foot's going to get muscular. This is that's just one more fascinating part of why I love doing this show and why I love meeting people who are interesting like you, because like you're taking me down a whole new path I've never thought of before. This is amazing.
So a really great, it's a short video that I recommend you watch. It was made by Vivo Barefoot, so it is biased, obviously, because this company made it, but it's called Shoespiracy. So like shoe conspiracy. And it dives really quickly into a lot of information that we just like talked about and stuff. It's a short video, maybe like 7 minutes long at most, but it gives you a really quick overview into it. And then they go into talking about how many bones and muscles you have in your foot and stuff. So it's like, it's a nice little quick like dive into it, and then again, you can explore all these other companies. What was another company from? Oh, there's a company called Feel Grounds. So it's kind of like you feel the ground and stuff. There's just so many companies.
This is amazing. Okay, I'm excited to explore this more. So, I one thing that I want to ask you is like, what sets you apart, right? So I know that you come from this background of doing you had your own back problems, which led you to doing this work. What else do you think sets you apart, like in your work with people? Why What's different about how you approach working with people around, helping them with their back issues?
So I think one of the things that sets me apart is I have ever since I so growing up as a child, I was extremely riddled with anxiety, right? I was extremely anxious all the time. Uh, Generally very, very introverted. I had a lot of social anxiety as a kid, so I read a lot. For some reason, I also became extremely observant. Maybe it was because of those things, since I wasn't talking to anybody, I was just watching stuff, right? Uh, so I became very, very observant as a child. So, I'll tell you a fun fact that will lead into this. So, my fun fact is that when I was 10 years old, I taught my little sister how to swim. We were at a friend's pool and I was like in the pool, right? And then my sister was like very scared to like jump in. She's like, I don't know how to swim. And I just told her, like, I'll teach you how to swim. So I got her in the pool. I was holding her hands. I was like, okay, like stick your legs out, kick them, blah, 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 blah. I was slowly like over hands. And, we went through the whole process. And by the end of the day, she was jumping in the deep end of the pool and swimming over and stuff. And ever since then, like I've been able to teach, swimming and stuff like that to people. But the fun fact of this is I don't know how to swim. Like I am incapable of treading water or like floating on my back or on my stomach. I sink like a brick and I can't figure out why. But I bring this up is because even as a little 10-year-old kid, I saw the mechanics of how people swam, the movements that they did, tiny little nuanced things that happened when they were swimming and stuff. And I was able to teach that to my sister, a little 4-year-old, right? So I'm like 10, she's 4, and even at that age, I was able to like communicate it to her. And I feel like that's something that I have been able to do the majority of my life is I've always been able to be extremely observant and catch little tiny details of things that are happening and connect the dots as to how that may create a cascading effect for something else to happen, right? Let's say somebody's squatting and they're like, I always wake up with pain in my shoulder and in my neck. And then I have them squat and I realize that one foot is like internally rotated and the arch is collapsing. And that's creating this cascading effect going all the way up their body and it leads to this, right? Little tiny things like that. So I think that's one of the things that sets me out apart is I have always been so meticulous and so like attention to detail oriented, not necessarily because I want to, but it's just because how I am. And the other reason is because I have walked in everybody's shoes. I have been through the pain. I have done all the mistakes that everybody has made and will probably continue to make. And I have done the deep like mental health work, right? I've gone that route too, which is a big pillar of health and fitness that a lot of people ignore. Very common thing is like you have to exercise, you have to like lift weights, you have to eat right, and you have to do your cardio. But people forget that rest and recovery and mental health are extremely important pillars of the other two. And if those two aren't there, the other two won't be able to maximize themselves and likely everything will crash down. 95% of diets fail. People aren't really doing it in a healthy way. They're not working on these two other pillars properly, so they can get to a certain point and then just crash and burn again. So I've gone through all of those cycles many, many, many times, and I still continue to go through certain parts of them even to this day. So I continue to find new tools and new ways of overcoming these obstacles. And on top of that, I've been doing this for almost a decade. So I've helped so many people of all different walks of life. Another fun fact, the first gym that I worked at was in the city of Arcadia, which is predominantly Chinese. So when I was there, like 90% of my clients did not speak one word of English. So I coached them for many years with Google Translate. I learned a few little words and phrases in Mandarin to communicate with them, but also I became very, very good at being able to communicate with my body and like doing small little touches to them so that they can identify certain things that they needed to fix. So I think that just goes with my whole little attention to detail obsession or eye for it. So I think that sets me apart.
Absolutely. So those pillars, right, that you mentioned, exercise, lift weights, eat right, do the cardio, make sure that you get the sleep, the rest and recovery, and then the mental health. Like, what's the number one thing that people can do for their mental health?
This is a lot. There could be a lot of things, but I think maybe I can boil it down to kind of like my interview process, which is just finding your deep rooted why. Like, why is it that I want to lose 10 pounds? Why is it that I want to be able to run a marathon? Like, why, whatever your goal may be. And don't stop at just the blanket answer of, because I want to, because 10 pounds is what I'm supposed to lose, whatever it may be. Like, really dig deep why. And that's one of the biggest things that you can do for your mental health, because then you're digging deep within yourself. You might realize that, oh, the reason I want to do X goal is because this thing happened to me when I was a child, or this thing happened to me in a previous relationship, or this thing happened to me because of whatever experience I had. And I'm realizing that that's what I'm trying to combat, right? Or these feelings that I've experienced, I'm trying to find a way to overcome them or not experience them again. And doing that gives you a much clearer reason as to why you want to achieve a goal, or maybe it changes your goal into something much more tangible and much more meaningful to that individual. And then they can actually like really fortify the strength training part, the cardio part, the eating right part, the sleep part, because since they have such a deep, strong why, a deep, like rooted mental health why, it's much easier to implement the other ones. And it's much easier to fall back into them when you fall off the path, because it's going to happen to everybody.
And how do you get to that answer? Like you mentioned, right? A lot of people just say, well, because I'm supposed to, because I want to. How do you get them over that hurdle? How do you get them to go deeply and get that deeper insight?
You ask why until they tell you to shut up. You just have to keep asking. You just have to keep asking questions. Like, you have to. I mean, as an example, I had an interview with somebody where, hey, okay, they said they wanted to lose, let's say, 10 pounds, right? I was like, well, okay, great, 10 pounds. Like, where did that number come from? Because, I think I should be losing 10 pounds. I could be at this weight. Like, well, what's important about that weight? It's like, oh, well, that's the weight that I was at when I was in high school. I'm like, cool. Like, that's awesome. How long ago was that? X amount of years. I'm like, okay. Well, how would it make you feel to be back at that weight? I would feel good. Why? It's like, oh, well, in high school, I had a bunch of energy. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Like, it's great to want to have more energy, but like, why do you want to have more energy now? And it turns out that they had kids and they felt bad. They felt guilty that they didn't have the energy to play with their kids because they would always just get tired. And it's like, well, wow, like I completely understand. Like I can definitely see that you would want to play with your kids. Like, why is it important to you to play with your kids? And like, well, she got kind of upset. She's like, well, I'm their mom. But then you got that very strong emotional reaction. It's like, oh, that's why. You want to be there for your child. Like you're their mother. May feel like you're failing them, right? So it's just really just asking why, becoming a little kid again, just obnoxiously asking why.
And so if you had to categorize like among like the people that you work with, like what are most people's whys? Or like what's like a really surprising why?
Honestly, it's not surprising because almost everybody's deep why is because they just want to feel better for those around them and themselves. They want to be around for them much longer. They want to set the right example. They feel a responsibility. They may feel guilty because they are recognizing that they may have bad habits, or those bad habits may have, bled into their family members, right? Their children, their spouse, and they want to improve for themselves and for those around them that they truly care about and love. That's honestly the biggest why. I have had a few, I mean, another thing that does happen is people just like, I don't care. Like, I just want to do this. And like, they just shut down. They don't want to dig deeper into the why. Sometimes that happens later in the training once they become more comfortable with you, right? Some people are very, very reserved, and that's okay, and then it comes out later, but it still comes out to that deep rooted thing where it's like, I just want to feel better. I want to feel more confident. I want to feel more energetic. Like overall, they just want to feel like a better version of themselves.
Absolutely. Better version of themselves. Isn't that what we all feel? What we
Yeah,
all want to feel?
yeah, absolutely.
So we talked about your business, which is also very closely related to your fitness. But let's do talk about your personal connection to fitness. So, like even you have to motivate yourself. And even you have to stay fit because part of your business is you're a bit of a billboard, right? When you're at the gym and you're working with, you want to show your clients like, hey, I can do this too, right? So how do you? So tell me about your personal, like, what do you do to stay fit?
So, in terms of the gym, I work out 4 to 5 times a week. In terms of like lifting weights, I try to spend no more than an hour actually lifting weights. If I spend more than an hour, likely it's because I was lazy and I try to get out of my workout by talking to other people and distracting myself, right? So I try to commit myself to being like, no, like I need to stick to my rest times, and that will lead me to completing my workout within this amount of time. On
What are
top of
your
that,
rest?
it depends on what I'm doing. Rest times can be very dependent on what the goal is of the workout. If you're doing something that's more strength focused, you likely want to rest enough to recover to be able to do that same weight again because you're focusing just on strength. So those rest times can be up to 3 minutes at a time. If you're working more so like time limited and you're trying to just keep your heart elevated and stuff, rest times can be 90 seconds, as short as like 60 seconds, just 1 minute. So it really depends on what the goal and the intent of the movement is, or maybe just the whole goal of the workout is. So we can say as little as 1 minute up to 3 minutes, depending on what I'm doing for that day or for that movement.
Okay, let me ask this because when I work out, I don't want to rest. I see
Hmm.
everybody else resting at the gym.
Hmm.
So I want to like cycle through some like different muscles. So if I'm like doing a chest press, right? And then I want to like get up and I want to do like, I don't know, like a squat. That's what it's called.
Hmm.
So I want to get up and like do squats or something so that while my chest is resting, I'm doing something else, like a totally different part of my body. And then I can just go right back into the chest press. Is there anything wrong with that, or like do you do that, or
So
am I
no,
weird for doing that?
no, no, no. There is absolutely nothing wrong or weird with that. So that can be considered like circuit training. Circuit training is where you're doing like multiple workouts, kind of like you create like stations, right? And you're like, I go from here, 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 and you're kind of just go in a circle. And so you do it a certain amount of rounds and then you do another circuit. Nothing wrong with that. If you're doing just two movements back to back, that's called a superset, right? It's like you do that bench press, immediately you do the squat, and then maybe you rest 60 seconds and you repeat. There's nothing wrong with that. But let me ask you, why don't you want to rest?
I want to I want to go on with my day. I want to like, I want to hit the gym. I've got half an hour and I want to get as much exercise as I can done because I got other stuff.
Okay, that's totally understandable, but have you ever tried working out for more than half an hour? Or is it really truly just a time constraint and that's stopping you from working out longer?
I have tried working out longer and then I get charged at the parking.
Mm,
So if I stayed there one time for like 6 hours because I was like, let me see how long I can work out. And
yeah.
I stayed for 6 hours and I worked out for 6 hours. And I had this huge bill when I was leaving the
Okay.
parking structure. And I was like, I'm never doing this again. How dare they charge
Yeah.
me $20 or whatever. I was like, what? This is ridiculous. But even like on a normal day, if I go a little long, 2 hours and like 5 minutes, and they're like, yeah, we want our charge because
Hmm.
that you only get so much time like for like going to the gym when you put your ticket into the machine, like it only
Hmm.
gives you like 2 hours. So with the shower and with other stuff, like it can be easy to go over 2 hours and then have to pay. So
Hmm.
that's why, because I don't want to pay for parking. Is that a good
Okay.
reason?
Oh, that's a totally valid reason. I get it. That parking structure sucks because it's like and sometimes that machine that gives you that the parking and stuff, sometimes it doesn't work either. So then
I
people
know.
get very upset. Okay, so that's totally valid. I get it. But what if you had a structured workout with structured rest times and you were guaranteed that you could finish your workout within, let's say, 1 hour, and you knew it took you, 15 minutes to take a shower, do everything else, another 10 minutes, and you were be able to be out of there in 1 hour and 45 minutes. Would you work out longer?
It's just for fun. I yeah, literally sometimes I just like I want to work out. I've got to meet my wife. I've got to do these other things. And so sometimes, yeah, I really only have like 45
Mhm.
minutes plus 15 for a shower. But yeah, I do like working out. So sometimes I would be willing to definitely stay for an hour. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So The reason why I asked is because there's nothing wrong with the circuit training. There's nothing wrong with doing supersets, and they're extremely useful and extremely helpful when you are on a time crunch, right? When you do really only have a certain amount of time, it's like, hey, I need to go in, I need to get the work done, and I need to get out now. But if you have certain goals, let's say maybe your goal was to gain a lot of strength, maybe your goal was to, do whatever it may be. Maybe you needed to add some cardio in there as well. Then it's like, can we find other ways to be able to get you to work out a lot longer? Or are you really dead set on this is how I work out? Or is it because of the time constraints? So that's kind of what I was trying to get into. Like, it seems like, yeah, you definitely do have time constraints. You are not opposed to working out longer. So it's just kind of like a schedule dependent type of thing. I see, I see.
Okay.
So yeah,
Okay. That helps. That helps
yeah,
me understand that better. So
yeah.
so people should stay different amounts of time at the gym based on certain goals that they have, like if they want to build muscle or if they want to add cardio, i.e., help them lose fat, for example, like based on their goals is sort of informs how long they should be at the gym and how many days a week.
Correct. Now, with that, also, I don't recommend that people overdo it because there is diminishing returns. You will get to the point where you just burn yourself out and you get tired, and the reverse happens. Instead of continuing your progress, you start going backwards with your progress because your body's under so much stress and load that it can't improve. So, in general, when it comes to working out, a weightlifting workout should take you anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour, and that's it. When it comes to cardio, you don't want to think of cardio as a tool for fat loss. It's something that you do for your heart, and it's for heart health because your heart is also a muscle. So you want to exercise a muscle. You want to have a nice, strong heart because that's the beating machine that keeps you moving, right? So I recommend about 90 minutes a week of about zone two cardio. So keeping your heart rate within like a certain threshold, maybe about like 60% of what your body can actually handle, your heart can actually handle, which is there's tests and stuff like that to kind of figure that out. There's also calculators you can find online that gets you pretty close to that. So at most, people shouldn't be spending more than an hour and a half in the gym if they're working out 3 times a week. Like you do not have to do more than that at all.
What are your goals in the gym, Jerry? You're built, right? You already have muscle and stuff. Like, what would be someone like you? What would your goals be in the gym?
So I have gone through a lot of different goals. I've gone through a whole bunch of different things, different seasons of my life, I guess we could put it. And when it comes to the gym, at first, when I first started working out, everything was about powerlifting, and that's what I was focused on, was just the big three movements: squat, bench, and deadlift, and becoming as strong as I could in those. After that, I transitioned to other stuff, and it's just, I go through waves of like things that I want to focus on. Currently, and I think probably for the foreseeable future, my goal is just longevity. So keeping my body as mobile as possible while still trying to stay strong and maybe get stronger under certain movements, but not putting myself just in a box of like this is what I do. This is it. My big long-term goals is just maintaining all my joint health, all my ligaments, all my muscles and everything, doing an adequate amount of cardio so that I have a very healthy heart, my blood pressure stays down, I have, very good resting heart rate, and that's what my focus is right now. Is just long-term health, long-term muscle health, long-term joint health, and obviously staying pain-free with my back.
And how do you optimize for maintaining your joint health, muscle health, ligament health for longevity?
So for muscle health in general, I work out, like I told you, 4 times a week, about an hour per workout, so about 4 hours per week. Sometimes I do a fifth workout in the week, and that fifth workout I consider it my playtime. So what I do is I explore movements I don't normally do. They could be very abnormal movements where I'm doing like very odd, strange things, or I'm doing movements that I don't generally do normally. Maybe that's because I just haven't done them in a while and I want to feel them again. Or maybe I have a new client that wants to explore these movement pathways and I want to experience them again so I can remember things that they may be going through, or so I can remember things that they may be hiccups that they might experience, in whether in technique or injuries and stuff like that, so we can prevent all those things from happening. but that's what I do for muscle. In additional, in addition for joints and ligaments, tendons, and also for muscle is I stretch a lot. I keep my body moving as much as possible. Generally, when I'm inside of my office, I have a standing desk and then I have a stool under it. So like I'm able to stand and I'm able to just constantly be shifting my weight on the stool, just moving around, moving my spine, keeping myself moving. Whenever I'm on the couch or whenever I'm in the living room watching TV, watching a movie, I generally don't sit on the couch. I sit on the floor. The thing that happens when you sit on the floor is you're going to start becoming uncomfortable just sitting there in one position. So you're naturally going to want to shift. You might cross your legs. You might want to stick one leg out, stick the other leg out. Now that one leg's out, you might want to reach for it with one hand. And you just keep your body in this perpetual motion while your brain is, decompressing, watching a movie, watching TV, watching whatever it is that you enjoy on top of like just mobility that I'm doing, like very specific mobility. Maybe like right now my hips have gotten a little tight again. So it's like, okay, I need to stretch my hips more often. I need to do certain movement patterns, certain things to keep them loose. But in general, it's that like I try to be on the floor as much as possible because it's going to keep me moving and stretching more than like how I am right now sitting in the chair. This is probably the longest I've sat in a chair in a while.
Yeah, how would you optimize for sitting in a chair? Because this is like we're sitting here for a couple hours. Like, how do
Mhm.
you keep things moving while we're sitting?
I would say, if possible, give yourself ADD so you can just be fidgeting all the time. I don't know if you noticed, but I've been fidgeting. I don't have ADD, but I just try to move as much as I can. So this is a high chair, so my feet don't touch the ground. So I'm kind of just like kicking my legs around right now, just like moving them and stuff. Every now and again, I'll just like kind of bring one leg up and I'll just like cross it over and I'll hold that for a little bit until maybe I get tired of it and then I just switch and I'll switch another leg. I have another chair next to me, so I put my foot up on that chair too. So just little things like that. The goal is to be in motion as much as possible. You don't want to just have a standing desk and just stand there rigid because that's not going to help either, right? So even if you are in a chair, you want to just kind of just shift around, move, look like a little ADHD kid in second grade that just keeps fidgeting with everything, right? Like that's actually kind of a good thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna take that habit. Okay, so one of the important things that we talk about, overall, of course, this podcast we talk about the four F's, right? Finance, fitness, family, and fun. So, tell us about your family goals.
Okay. So my family goals. I just got married about,
Congrats.
thank you very much. So about 2.5-ish months ago, 2 months ago, I got married to the love of my
That's amazing.
life. Yeah, thank you to my best friend. So in terms of family, our goal is to obviously we just got married. We're gonna go on our honeymoon at the end of the year, and we want to start a family as soon as possible. Very simple family goals is that we want to have two kids. Well, she wants to have three. I want to have two. So we'll see what happens with that, right? We're gonna play it by ear. But just being able to have children, kind of like how I alluded to before, she is a therapist. So I feel like in that sense, we make a good team because she's got all the knowledge for the mental health stuff and all that. And I got the knowledge with the physical. So we want to be able to, just like with everybody, right? Be able to raise a very healthy family because of our professions, we have seen certain habits that can be formed, certain things that can happen, right? Thankfully, because of our knowledge, our goal is to like prevent a lot of things like that, right? Childhood obesity, type 2 diabetes, being able to harbor a very open, communicative household with our children, and stuff like that. That's very immediate, like surface level goals. Like that's what we want to do.
That's amazing. So, as you said, these things are simple,
Hmm.
but that doesn't mean that it's not gonna, like that it's easy to do at the level that you want to do it at. So, what are you planning, like in terms of like how are you going to be resilient with this, right? So you want to you provide a healthy healthy support for your family. Like, what are you going to do when your kid, throws a fit and throws a tantrum in the store, or like, how are you going to be resilient when, because that's what kids do. They look for your weakness. They go, oh, my dad wants me to be healthy. Yeah, today I'm gonna, I don't know, eat a bunch of ice cream or something. Like, what are you
Yeah.
gonna? How are you gonna be resilient in these situations?
That is an extremely good question. And I think if we dive deep, I think the thing that will help me be resilient, similar to what has helped me be a very good trainer, is pulling from life experiences. I can always remember the things that I experienced as a child, in my household, the things that I lived through and stuff. And kind of like that has been my guiding, like, in how I want to be, like, as a father, what I looked for in a partner. And before, I even proposed to my now wife, like, I straight up told her, I was like, hey, we need to have a lot of very serious conversations about finances, about how we want to treat our children, what we want out of our lives, what do we prioritize, and stuff like that. And I wanted to make sure that we were aligned with those things. And I bring that up because it's like those are things that I did not see as a child. As an adult, I can reflect back and I can see how those conversations could have completely changed everything, right? And I think about those things a lot. I think about, you know, I learned from my parents' mistakes, right? And I do not want to commit those mistakes either. And I feel so strongly about that. It has made me who I am today. That's why I tried so hard to not be in pain. That's why I try so hard to talk to strangers and try to help them out. Like, I'm an extremely introverted, antisocial person. I have a lot of social anxiety. I don't want to do that, right? But the pain that I have experienced, from myself, from my upbringing and everything is so strong that it overcomes all that stuff. And I can't say for sure, but I can hope that that will continue to be a driving force whenever my child is, being a child and, you know, pushing my buttons and I'm probably stressed out from a full day of work and other stuff, right? Bills and, putting food on the table and maybe arguing with my wife and this and that. And there was traffic on my way home and, somebody cut me off and whatever, right? So many things can be happening, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, those things don't matter. What matters is this right in front of me, right? I can't bring all of that and dump it on a child that has no idea what any of those things are because their world is watching Blue's Clues on TV and playing with toys or whatever, right? It just doesn't make any sense. So I think, that will definitely help me out.
How did you know she was the one?
Amazing question. I There's certain qualities that I knew that I wanted in somebody. Um, and she displayed those qualities very, very, very well. And I think as time went on, I noticed that she didn't change. So the best piece of advice that my mom ever gave me was be your like authentic self. If you're somebody who's grumpy all the time, be grumpy. If you're somebody who has this habit, just do it in front of whoever it is that you may be dating or you like or whatever. Don't try to be somebody who you're not. That doesn't mean you can't change and grow, but you're not hiding what your true nature is like. So I've always presented myself like that with people in person, right? I've always presented myself like that with, potential partners or somebody I date and those things. So I saw that in her, and as time went on, I noticed that those things did not change. And I would bring up very difficult conversations, and we would have those conversations very openly and honestly. And the fact that we aligned so well on practically everything, minus the fact that she wants 3 kids and I want 2 kids, like I was like, okay. On top of that, she has made me be like such a better person. She has helped me like unlock like such a higher level of myself that I didn't even think was possible, right? And just being able to have that person that compliments me so well, uplifts me so much, and is like my biggest cheerleader and supporter, like unconditionally before we even got engaged. Like it was like, yeah, like this is what I've wanted. This is what I've looked for, right? This is what I've realized like I value in a partner. Again, reflecting back to things that I saw as a child within my own family, within friends' families and stuff. things that I've seen now as an adult with, people that I may know who are married or in long-term relationships. From an outside point of view, right, you can see things a whole lot differently than when you're inside something. So those things have really helped. On top of that, I think something that helped us a lot is in the middle of our relationship, we did break up for a little while. She went through some hardship in her life and was not in a position to harbor a relationship. And, at least for a relationship, that's probably the best thing that could have happened because we had some time apart from each other for no, malicious reason, just that it just wasn't the right time. And in spending that time apart from each other, we both kind of like explored and realized that it's like that's not what we want. We wanted each other, and we just gravitated back in. And when we did, it was like, damn, like this is it. This truly is it. There's no guessing of like this person's great, but what if there's somebody better, right? But it's like we did that. We explored. We were done, explored, and I was like, nope. There's nothing better. Like that's the thing. So yeah.
What did she do? You mentioned she helped you like unlock like a higher level of yourself. Like, what did she do to help you unlock that higher level? And then what is that higher level of yourself that you're seeing?
So she's an extremely patient person, and she has taught me to be more patient. When I see her, like I look up to her. I look up to her a lot in how she treats her family. She's very, very family oriented. She's extremely close to her family. I grew very distant from my family. I moved away from my hometown when I was 21, and like I didn't really look back for many years. I would hardly visit. I would hardly go back. I had a lot of like very hurt emotions and hurt memories, from just being there. I didn't want to experience that. And even though like, everybody goes through things, and even with things happening, she was still so family oriented, so like just there for them and just like wanted to be a part of their lives like nonstop. I was like, wow, like why can't I do that? Right. So then like just little tiny details like that, little things that I saw pushed me to want to be better. Like, hey, if she's this type of person, like she deserves somebody, amazing as well. Like she is. So it's like I strive for that as well because that's what she deserves, right? As somebody as her partner. So I think it has unlocked like a much higher level of like patience and understanding and openness within myself because I just strive to be more like her.
That's amazing. So you found someone who you really felt was someone who could bring your life, bring parts of you out that you didn't necessarily know that you could
Mhm.
achieve. Like you didn't know that you could be as close to your family like she was able to be. You didn't know you could be as patient as her. But what does patient look like?
Patient looks like not jumping to immediate conclusions or not trying to answer or react, just being able to sit with your emotions. That's something that she taught me very, very early on. Like, let's say we had like a disagreement or an argument about something. Maybe since I'm so like analytical and focused on little details, it was like, okay, you know, process A, B, C, D, boom, 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 boom. And then it's like, okay, here's the solution. Cool. It's over. It's done. Like, let's move on. And she was like, no, I want to sit with these emotions. Like, it's not over. Like, yeah, we're fine in that sense, but I need to sit with these emotions. I need to accept these emotions. I need to be okay with them. And I think I didn't think about it before, but maybe that was a part of my impatience where it's like, I just want this to be over with, like, whatever, like, just let's move on. Like, that's it. Yeah, problem solved. So being able to just be like okay with like sitting in that pain or in that negative space and just truly accepting whatever may have happened. I think I've always been really good at doing that with positive stuff. I've always been really good at being mindful and just remembering, like, oh, wow, like things aren't that bad. Things are pretty good, right? But whenever it came to something bad, like I wanted to get away from it as soon as possible. And she taught me that it's like, no, it's okay to sit with it. Just accept emotions and just feel them out for a little bit, It's okay. So I think that's a really big thing in terms of patience.
So if you're accepting the emotions and it's different from what you've done before, right?
Mhm.
Before you would say, I thought it through, I've got a solution. And now you're hearing from her like, no, it's not about just an analytical solution. There's this whole other world of emotion. So how are you able to actually do that with yourself, right? That's new for you. How did you get yourself to be able to sit with the emotion?
I sat next to her, right? Like we like very early on in our relationship, we, had a very big argument and, you know, it was a really tough thing. And once it was over in my mind, right, I was like, yeah, like, come on, like, let's go make a puzzle or something like that. I forgot what it was. And she was like, no, I just want to lay here for a bit. So I just did it. I just laid there with her. And it sucked at first, right? Because I think there was a lot of like impatience with me and also maybe a lot of avoidance within me, right? Nobody wants to feel bad. Nobody wants to feel these things. And maybe that's something that I did a lot. Again, going back to my childhood, there was a lot of just kind of like, hey, let's just get away, get away, get away, just ignore it, out of sight, out of mind, like done, right? So just being able to learn that, like, hey, it's okay to sit with these things. It's okay to process these things. It's okay. It just as simple as it sounds, like it just is. It's all right. Like nothing bad is going to come out of it. Like the problem is solved if I'm thinking about it analytically. But maybe if I sit with this a little bit longer, like there won't be any lingering emotions eventually, or maybe it won't come up later because I try to dismiss it so fast. Later, something else might trigger it to come back because I truly wasn't over it. So it's like, okay, like it's fine. Just sit with it. Just accept it. Feel it for a little bit. Like it's not that bad.
So, like you said, childhood issues, right? You're feeling like, hey, we solved the problem. Let's get away. I'm 21. I gotta lose this fat, right?
Hmm.
You're like, I don't want to feel bad. I don't want to feel that old thing. I don't. I want the fat to be gone. And she's like, no, no, no. There's this other thing. Yeah, I get it. You can get rid of the fat, but what's this fat feel like, or what does the
Hmm.
argument feel like? Where are we now emotionally? Like I sometimes for me, like if it's late at night, I'll snap, and my wife knows this, and she might snap at me too, but it's for different reasons. But for me, it's just if it's just late at night and it has nothing to do with anything, it's just that I'm tired. It's not to do with her. It's not to do with any situation, and it's apparently not something that I'm able yet to control. I'll say something, that's going to cause a problem, but it's just because it's really late at night and I need to be asleep. That's the solution, but it creates emotions
Hmm.
if I do that, right? If I say something, that's not cool to her, like the issue last night, I'll just share with you, Jerry. Like last night, had a great night, came home, it was date night, came home from date night, we were having a great time. But, I go in the bathroom and the lights are only like on and off. There's no dimmer. By the way, I'm going to try to fix this later. I'm going to try to get a dimmer and install it myself. Like I'm just like done with not having a dimmer. But, last night, and I said, honey, I want to fix this. I want to fix this light. There's a few ways I could do it. Like I talked to Jerry. He talked about, remote control bulbs, but maybe I'm just going to change the dimmer. And she's like, what? I like the lights the way they are. And I said, it's prison lights, honey. It's prison lights. She did not want to hear that.
Yeah.
And this causes emotions, right? so we
Hmm.
so now we're feeling emotions after having the best night, and it's just because it's like after midnight, I need to be asleep. Like
Hmm.
about 7 or 8 o'clock, my brain checks out, so I don't need to be talking. You just if I'm having fun, we can have a great time. But so because there's those emotions, like how would you then handle this situation? And I had to sit with those emotions last
Yeah.
night, and I was not comfortable. I was like, why did I do that?
Hmm.
Now I have said something that maybe is going to upset her, and now she's going to feel negative emotions, like, why did I call it prison life?
Hmm. Hmm.
But that's how I was trying to communicate with her, that this is a problem for me. My eyes are blue. The blue eyes are very sensitive to light. And at night, or my eyes are, but I have noticed that, having blue eyes, like having friends, like they wouldn't squint at light the way I would.
Hmm.
But my eyes are just very sensitive. So anyway, so dealing with that, so like, how would you help me to understand what you know that I don't know, right? Because I did not like laying there and feeling like, oh man, I have disappointed myself. I have disappointed my wife. I said words that she's not going to appreciate. And I don't know how to stop it except by just going to bed earlier or not talking late at night.
Hmm.
So it's just the emotional part that I'm looking at. How would you help me, you know, as somebody who's now got to do what you're doing better? So
So
deal
one
with emotions.
so one thing that I would say is that sit with it and accept it and just feel bad, right? Because as you think about it, like you said yourself, you're gonna feel bad and you're like, damn, like that's not what I wanted out of this. Like we just had a great night and I feel like I just ruined it probably, right? Because you had an argument. And it's like just sit with it and accept it and just realize that because you're sitting with it so much, now you could probably communicate with her better. That's something that I do with my wife and something I'm really good at is if I get upset, again, I sit with it and I'm able to just go up to her and be like, hey, like, I apologize for that. I realize, it made you feel this type of way. That wasn't my intention. I think it happened because I'm tired. Like, I shouldn't have done it though. Like, I'm really gonna work on it. What I meant to say was blah, 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 but I messed it all up. And I feel like being able to sit with your emotions lets you be so much more sincere with your intentions and like be able to have that communication, just being like, hey, like, I thought it through. Like, you're totally valid for how you felt and how you reacted. Like, I messed up. Like that's not what I wanted out of this. I think that's been my biggest takeaway from being able to sit with my emotions is that I'm able to put myself in the other person's shoes. And also I feel so guilty about maybe my actions or my reaction where I'm like, damn, like kind of an asshole. Like I shouldn't have done that.
Okay, so let me just tell you what I just heard, because I think this is a perfect, like, I'll call it a script, right? So like, to be able to tell her, I'm sorry. Like last night I couldn't do it because I was just, my brain was fried. I'm
Mhm.
tired, I'm late at night. I didn't know how to do any better. But today I could say, hey, honey, I want to apologize for last night. I think it made you feel bad. I think it made you frustrated. That, the way I was talking about, the lights in the bathroom, you know, probably because I'm tired. What I really meant to say was just that my eyes are really sensitive to light, and I'm trying to figure out better ways of sleeping. It's really important to me to get better sleep so that I can be better for you and have better health, and sleep is tied to longevity. Like it's a big deal. And so that's maybe what was underneath the emotional outburst that I had, why I snapped. I never want to do that to you. You know that. Also, she knows that she understands this whole thing. It's it's been an issue that I've had, like as long as she's known me. But her feelings are valid. She still has feelings about it. I understand her feelings about it. I'm going to keep working on it, you know, just as I've fixed other things in my life that weren't apparently easy to fix. I was able to fix it over time. I'm going to keep working on this too. So now that I'm saying what I just heard from you back, it does feel like that would make not only me feel better, but I believe it would make her feel heard and feel better. And of course, I'd be open after I said all that to saying, like, what do you want to say about this? What are your feelings like?
Mhm.
And be there to listen to her.
Yeah, totally. And then it'll make her a lot more empathetic to what you're going through, right? Oh, damn, sleep is really important because he wants to be healthier for me. Like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, right? If you're able to sit with your emotions and then you can articulate everything a whole lot better and be so vulnerable and open and honest, it kind of like breaks down the other person's walls too, you know? So I think, yeah, definitely being able to do that is it's amazing because it just helps your relationship in general. And that doesn't have to be with a spouse. It could be with a child. It could be with a friend. It could be with anybody.
Yeah, that's a really great. I got to call it a script. I don't know what else to call it. What would
Mhm.
you call that if it wasn't going to be called a script?
Being an empathetic human, you know? Because we can all be very selfish, right? That was technically like a selfish response, right? It was just you snapping about you. And that's okay. We're all entitled to that. But then if you can sit with it, you can rationalize with yourself, you can accept your emotions, and then you accept their emotions. It's like, oh man, like, hey, she's a person too. She has feelings too. She took it this way. She doesn't realize, blah, 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 right? And you go through all of that. So it's like, it's also just kind of being like an empathetic human, you know, being very open-minded to like other people's experiences.
I like that. Now, what do you do for fun, Jerry?
I love watching movies. Like, I love movies, I love TV shows and stuff. So that's a big thing. Yeah, that's probably like one of the main things that I like to do because I'm already so active, like with the working out and stuff like that. I do enjoy hiking. I do enjoy doing outdoorsy stuff. I wish I could do it more, but generally my downtime is at night, and it's like I'm not gonna go hiking at 9 p.m., you know? So yeah, that's a big thing for fun is just being able to spend time with my wife and having us enjoy like a movie, a TV show. I've always considered that if I didn't go down this health and fitness route, I probably would have liked to do something creative with like film and stuff like that. In college, I took film history. In high school, I took a bunch of video production classes, and it's something that I find fascinating and I love. I love it so much. So yeah, probably that's like the most common thing for fun is that.
Any particular genre or like what constitutes the kinds of movies and TV shows that you like to watch?
So my favorite director is Quentin Tarantino. So just all his films. But I think maybe the genre that I like watching the most will be kind of like psychological thrillers, kind of like movies that really just make you think a lot and just keep you guessing like what's going on? Why is this happening? At least in terms of like storytelling and stuff like that. But I
Give me a
can
few examples.
a good psychological thriller. Have you ever seen the movie The Witch? It came out back in like 2014, 2015 or so, maybe later than that. It's called The Witch. It's like a psychological kind of like horror movie. It's very, very slow paced. It's a slow burn. They talk with like an old English accent, but the movie just kind of keeps you guessing like what's going on. That's kind of like a movie that I recommend. It's one that comes off my mind like immediately. Another really good psychological thriller. Movies like why am I blanking right now? This is a good question, but now I feel like I'm on the spot and I'm like, dang, I can't think of it. Like, have you seen like Inception? Inception makes you think a lot, right?
That's a good
You
one.
know, it's like how's this all happening? How's it working? The whole like layers and stuff like that. There's a great movie called The Prestige.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like about magic and stuff, and you think it's just about magic, but as the movie goes on, there's this whole other storyline. At the end, you're like, what? So yeah, things like that.
Have you seen Looper?
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Looper was great. Um, there's a really good. It's very weird. I had to watch it like 4 times, but it's called The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Yeah, The Killing of a Sacred Deer. It's weird in a sense, and it really, really makes you think. I had to watch it multiple times. I had to read stuff about Greek mythology to kind of like understand it a little bit more because there is a book in Greek mythology that's kind of called The Killing of a Sacred Deer. And once you read that book and you understand kind of like what happens, you start understanding more so like how things and why things certain things happen in the movie and stuff. So yeah, like just movies that make you think a lot, try to figure it out.
All right, let's move into the lightning round.
Okay.
All right, so a lot of these questions so far have been like broad questions. Lightning round is like more targeted questions. So, in your life, Jerry, what has been the best investment you've made for your financial health?
I bought a book by Ramit Sethi called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. That's probably the best investment I ever made. It wasn't even a lot of money, it was a little bit, right? Just for the book, at least a little bit in comparison to the wealth of knowledge that you get from it. Um,
What was the wealth of knowledge you got, and why did it matter?
Again, kind of like with therapy and stuff like that, like it asks, there's one big question that it asks you, which is what I like is like that self-discovery stuff, which was, what does money mean to you? Like, does it mean like it's a safety net? Does it mean freedom? Like, what does it mean, right? And it could be a very deep-rooted reason why it means a certain thing to a certain person. And like I had my wife read that book so that she could come to her own conclusions. And so we can talk about that very deep reason of like, what does money mean to us? And then we can talk about it and be like, well, this is how we can achieve whatever that deep rooted reason is and what our big goals are. And that kind of like drives the why.
So the thing that you got out of it was exploring your own, like, why does money matter to you? What does money mean to you? And then being able to have that conversation with your wife. And what is it that money means to you?
So to me, it means safety. You know, I did not grow up with money at all. You know, struggled a lot. There was so many times that, you know, there was a lot of like worry. The overarching theme actually was worry about money all the time. So being able to have that safety of like, hey, we don't have to worry about keeping the lights on. We don't have to worry about the gas, the electricity being turned off. We don't have to worry about, you know, not being able to make a payment, you know, for the home that we live in for many months on end and stuff. So it's definitely safety.
And your best investment for fitness.
My best investment for fitness has been like the countless seminars I have attended and the countless certifications that I've gotten. Like it's an ever evolving field. Information is always coming out. There's always new things to learn, and especially just learning from people from different walks of life, from different viewpoints, right? You can't, in my opinion, you can't just look at things as in they're black and white. It's gray. Everything is gray. The very few things that are black and white is like, should you work out for long-term health and longevity? It's like, yeah, you definitely should. But how does that exercise look like? Well, that's a gray area again, right? That's going to be different for everybody. So being able to just do so many different seminars and learn from so many people and being able to be in contact with them and just getting so much external feedback and external like opinions and views, it's been amazing.
How did you find the seminars? How did you know which seminar to go to?
Just following people on social media or like from word of mouth and stuff. You know, after you follow somebody for like a while, like you're seeing who they are, the type of like content that they're posting and stuff, and you're like, hey, that kind of aligns with the things that I want to learn, or with like the values that I have in terms of like how I see fitness or what I'm trying to provide for people. And, you know, it's like, hey, you know, like I'm willing to invest in this person to teach me stuff because it seems worthwhile, at least as far as I can tell now. And then again, you take a seminar and like maybe you learn a lot, maybe you don't learn too much, but you're always going to come out with something. So
Okay, so for the person, listening, for the audience member listening, so how can they do this? Like, how can they get this kind of value? So they should follow somebody on social media that they like in terms of fitness, and then like maybe go to one of their seminars. Or it's like, what can they do?
that is a very, very tough question because the internet is an amazing place. You know, it has allowed us to be more connected than, you know, we have ever been able to be like in human history. There's so much information out there. Like there's so many things that people don't even have to technically go to college for anymore because you could learn it all online. But with that comes the danger is that it's also like everything is online. Also false, incorrect information. So it's really tough to just recommend, hey, just follow the people that you like and, you know, do what they do and stuff because unfortunately some of the majority of the biggest like fitness influencers are just giving information and advice based on what worked for them and they're not generalizing things and going into the very nuanced as to what works for everybody because you can't say what works for everybody. Like on my Instagram I always post like on my story I'll post a thing where it's like ask me a question, fitness, health related, whatever. And a lot of people message me and they're like, you never give us a straight answer. I'm like, because I can't. Everything depends, right? what works for you will work differently for me, will work differently for my wife, will work for everybody, you know? So I always try to give very boring answers, but that's kind of how the world is. There's no magic bullet or anything. So that's why it's kind of tough to recommend, following a specific person or just following somebody you like, because it's like we're all extremely unique and complicated creatures. So there's not a black and white answer. Honestly, the best thing is to be able to find a coach that can guide you to do the process. But even then, being able to find a good qualified coach is very difficult because just like with social media, there's a lot of coaches out there that don't know how to communicate properly with people, maybe are not invested enough in their education, have not learned the tools that they need to work with a wide variety of people. They maybe just don't even care anymore. They're like, I'm just going to make you work out. Very commonly, people think that the metric of a good workout is, did I sweat? Am I tired? And am I sore the next day? And those are very poor metrics of a very good workout because I can make you sweat just by standing outside in the sun in the middle of the summer. Did you have a good workout? No, you just stood and baked in the sun, right? Are you tired? Well, that can be dependent on a million things. Did you get 2 hours of sleep the night before and you haven't eaten anything? You're going to be tired immediately, right? And are you sore? Well, soreness is going to go away after a while from adapting to a certain movement pattern. So just because you're not sore anymore doesn't mean that that movement is not effective anymore. So there's so many things. It's tough. Just like I answer on social media, like it's tough. I can't give you a straight answer because you just have to explore a lot. Then there's going to be a lot of like tripping over and falling until you finally start finding what works.
So don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Don't
They're gonna
exactly.
people are gonna find their own path eventually, but
Yeah.
you gotta start somewhere.
And have an open mind.
Best investment for family.
Best investment for family, I would say personal therapy. You know, I've talked with my wife many times how, we met each other and we're married now in our early 30s. And sometimes we wish we say like it would have been nice to have met, when we were younger, when we were like in our 20s and stuff like that. We could have started our family so much earlier. We could have started this path so much earlier. But we both immediately will acknowledge that, you know, we probably would not have lasted because we were both extremely different people when we were younger. And especially, at least I can speak for myself, because of all the therapy that I went through and all that self-discovery that I did and all the growth that I did before she and I ever even dated, I am a totally different person, you know? So it's like who I was back then would not have worked now. And because of that therapy that I did and all that self-discovery that I did and all that self-work that I did, our relationship is as good as it is now and as strong as it is now. So that's definitely the best investment I ever did for myself and for family.
So you did therapy and it changed you to be a different person. What is it about doing therapy that can help someone change?
I wouldn't say it changes them to be a different person, but it allows them to go down the path of self-discovery and realizing why they do the things that they do, and then they can realize whether those are bad habits or constructive habits, conducive habits to who they desire to be or what they want to have or the values that they want to have in their life. And then they can make changes accordingly or, make certain habits even stronger, double down on certain things, right? So not necessarily change. Maybe some people don't change. Maybe it just fortifies who they are and they become more secure about who they already are. Maybe not. So definitely that.
And your best investment for fun.
My best, a good TV. You can watch movies. No, my best investment well, yeah, for myself, my best investment for fun. Well, since I love movies so much, honestly, yeah, just a good TV and like a good surround system. And then those Hue light bulbs that I told you about, so I could dim the lights really low and just have a very good atmosphere for it. But also for my outside activities, because I love hiking, I like being outdoors, I love going to the beach and all that, like just the physical active stuff. My best investment is just investing into my physical health, like learning about stretching properly, eating properly, doing enough cardio. Because of how physically fit I am, I can enjoy those things to the best of my ability, which is at a much higher level than if I didn't, invest in my physical health.
And you mentioned stretching several times. What do people get out of stretching?
So, what they get out of stretching is mobility, and mobility is more ability to do what they want to do, right? If you want to be able to play with your kids, well, you're going to be stretching. And if it's guided stretching, you know what you're doing. Like, hey, maybe you have a tight lower back, but now you stretch your hamstrings, your glutes, you got your upper back a whole lot stronger. It's like, now I can run around with my kid and be in this crouched down position chasing after them because they're like 2 feet tall, right? So stuff like that. It's just, it unlocks much more capability of the human body to do what makes you happy.
And who should I interview next?
Good question. I think you should interview a therapist so you can get the other side of this.
So which therapist should I try to interview?
I would say my wife, but she's even more antisocial than I am, so I don't know how down she would be for that. Um, that's a good question, but I think I would say maybe my wife wouldn't be a good one because what I personally would be curious in you interviewing another therapist is because with me being a professional in terms of like physical fitness and stuff, I think I have a really good grasp and a really strong understanding in how much mental health plays into the physical as well. So I would personally be interested if you interviewed just a therapist that we have no relation to or under like we have kind of like influenced with exercise and see how much they might talk about exercise or if they even bring up exercise in terms of mental health because I truly believe that it is a synergistic system. You work on your body to work on your mind, you work on your mind to work on your body, and they feed off of each other. So I would be truly interested to see if there are any other therapists out there that think that as well.
Well, maybe there's a therapist who came from the fitness coaching side of things, or maybe who's really strongly into that fitness
Hmm.
coaching,
Hmm.
physical health. Okay, that's cool. And then what if you're my business coach and my goal is to grow this podcast so that it's the biggest podcast in the world and we're helping people to not only be able to be financially successful, but also recognize the value and improve their ability to have health in the other areas of their fitness, their family, and fun. What would you tell me to do to grow this podcast?
I would say do what you're doing right now. I think this is great being able to have these very like long format conversations with people where you can really dive deep into who they are, why they are, and like what they're doing in these areas and why they're doing them. Because it's I think it helps a lot of people realize that we're all very, very similar, a lot more similar than we are different. I think another thing you could definitely do is maybe, I don't know if you've done this already yet. I don't think I noticed it, but creating clips, little clips of these conversations, maybe uploading them as shorts on YouTube, reels on Instagram and stuff. Because we do live in that world. Unfortunately, people have very short attention spans. But maybe one of these clips can catch one of those squirrel attention spans and just be like, hey, maybe I do want to watch that full thing and figure out everything else that we're talking about. So I think that would be a really great thing is creating some short form content out of these conversations.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to do that. You're not the first person to tell me that, and that's been in my mind. I think I'm going to have to do that. Jerry, thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing all your personal story and your the important work that you're doing with your clients to help them, with their back issues and with their health overall, and including physical and mental health. And I think this has been an amazing interview. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. I have really, really appreciated this conversation. I didn't think we would go down the routes that we did. Like I told you, I kind of have been reserved from talking about a lot of this stuff on the internet. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity and this push to kind of be more open.
Brand new life, and today's the first day.
Yep, yep, yes it is.